Welcome to DIY Easy Crafts. Today we're going to take a look at how to make a resin on glass nautical wall art. Now I'm going to use two different types of total boat resin. For the first part of making the bubbles, I'm going to use a little bit of extra thickset resin which I had laying around. I also bought a silicone mold on Etsy for making these domes or spheres. This thickset resin comes out crystal clear, and I'm going to use those to make bubbles in this artwork. For the main part of the art, I'm going to use Total Boat's MakerPoxy. This is a really nice epoxy to use. It's thick, it stays in place, it won't run off the glass, etc. I had 3 panes of glass made. They were all 10 inches by 3 feet. I coated the back of them with contact paper so that any of this resin that dribbles over the side, isn't going to run onto the bottom and be very difficult to remove from the bottom of the glass. In the past, I've done it with painter's tape, which has always been kind of a pain in the neck to remove with epoxy embedded into it. So I'm hoping that the contact paper will work a little bit better. The top section of this artwork is basically going to be an ocean wave. Just like I've done some videos on making cutting boards and a bunch of other ocean wave projects. I start with the main color. In this case, it's a dark blue. I then add a lighter color. You could do a light blue. In this case, I'm going to use a green. And these are just dyes that you add to that MakerPoxy. Just a thin line of green. In front of the green, I'm going to add some clear. That clear is pretty important because you're going to add a thin layer or a thin strip of white in front of that. And the clear allows that white to kind of flow into it and over it. So I broke up this video into 3 sections. The top of this piece of artwork, the middle, and the bottom. The top and the middle, you can do one right after the other. You don't have to wait for one section to dry. The bottom section, I waited for everything else to dry before I used the sand. I just didn't want sand inadvertently getting embedded into wet resin. So I'm going to use a hairdryer now, and I'm just going to blow that white into the clear and up over the green and blue. And that's what creates the waves. The air pushing the resin, and then the heat from the hairdryer really creates the cell structure in the white. Gives it a very realistic look. Now we're going to move on and look at how I did the middle section of this art. And if you notice, the middle section starts darker blue at the bottom. It also has some white, waves to distinguish it from the bottom section. And then as you go up in the artwork, it becomes lighter and lighter and changes to green. So I start with some dark blue and some green mixed resin, or mixed dye into the MakerPoxy resin. And I'm just going to use the corner of a foam brush, and I'm going to try to follow the same curvatures that I created up at the top on the top section, so that it kind of follows a wave pattern. And towards the bottom, I'm going to make a little bit more of the darker blue. I'm going to transition as we go along from the darker blue at the bottom up to a real light green up at the top. So at first, this combination of blues and greens is really going to be the base to the ocean wave, just like I did up top. So then I added some clear, I added some white, and again I'm going to use that hair dryer to kind of blow the white and create some cell structure to it. All of this is very quick. This project does not take long at all. For the above that bottom section of the middle, I'm going to give it a coat of clear to start. And then I'm going to start with the green. And again, with the corner of that foam brush, I'm just going to do really short, quick strokes. Just put a little bit on. And I'm going to work my way down. Again, I'm still trying to follow that same, wave pattern. You can see that the flow of the wave on the top, goes up and then down and up again. I'm going to try to follow that pattern. And you can do this with whatever colors you wanted to. After the green, I'm going to add some light blue. And again, I want to transition, from a lighter color up top, down to a darker base. And believe me, I am absolutely no artist. My wife had seen something similar to these, in an art store down south. We didn't want to pay thousands of dollars, so I decided to try to make something. I'm finally going to add some dark blue, just some small details, add a little bit of character, a little bit of depth to it. And then I'm going to use a regular brush, not the foam brush, to kind of soften those a little bit, make them blend. And don't forget these pieces of glass, which I mentioned I had cut down at the local glass supply. I also had the edges rounded, but it does have a coating of contact paper on the back, so they're not as clear as the end result is going to show. These are those little domes or spheres that I cast earlier. I had cast those at the very beginning because they really take 2 or 3 days to completely harden before you can take them out of the mold. So those are going to be my version of bubbles through the water layers. And I just dropped those right onto the wet epoxy. Now we're going to move on to the bottom section. Now I mentioned before, I let everything else dry overnight before I did the bottom section. The bottom section is super easy. It's just a combination of sand, shells, starfish, and I've also got some sand dollars. So I'm going to start with a clear coat of the same MakerPoxy. And then I just sprinkled some dry beach sand. It will stick wherever the epoxy is. I add some additional epoxy on top of that sand in order to apply the starfish and the shells. A couple sand dollars. And I was able to pick up most of these shells and stuff just down at the local arts and crafts. It was Michael's Arts and Crafts. But you can find them online. You can look on Amazon. So this is the contact paper. I removed this very easily, and whatever drops had rolled over onto the back pulled off very easily. So this actually worked better than painter's tape. And then this is the finished product. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I would absolutely love to hear some feedback in the feedback section. I'd also like to give you an invite to check us out on the web at DIYeasycrafts.com. I've got a bunch of do-it-yourself projects on there. Thank you very much for watching.